Welcome to the Albuquerque Journal's premier high school sports show, Prep Central, with your host, James Yodice. This show is presented by Western New Mexico University.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Preps Central, the Albuquerque Journal's high school sports podcast. I am James Yodice. I am the high school sports editor at the Albuquerque Journal. Welcome. Got a lot of football to talk about today, some cross-country as well toward the end of the show. First off, of course, we want to mention our sponsor, Western New Mexico University. We thank them for their support, of course. Also, look, if you enjoy this type of content, these type of podcasts, and you want to help us keep these shows free, we encourage you to, find our show notes at the bottom of the page, and you can find a special digital subscription promotion that certainly would help us on our end as well. So we hope you'll consider that. That's all part of the process of bringing you these podcasts. So as I said, we got a lot of football to talk about. We're into Week 10. As I said here, it's Wednesday, October 23rd. Week 10 begins on Thursday night, and there are several big games on the docket later. We're going to talk about them in a later segment. First, I want to reflect on the two big games from Week 9. We had Roswell and Artesia playing at Bulldog Bowl, and we had Bernalillo and Bloomfield playing in Bloomfield. These were both number ones against number twos. In 5A, it was number one Artesia and number two Roswell. In 4A, it's number one Bloomfield and number two Bernalillo. I was at the Bernalillo-Bloomfield game. We'll talk about that one in a second. We need to start with Roswell and Artesia. Roswell wins this game 44-40. The first time Roswell has actually won at Bulldog Bowl in 24 years, as hard as that is to believe. This was a very significant win for Roswell, more psychologically than anything else. I wrote in my column that ran in the Journal on Sunday about how much meaning we should attach to these number one versus number two games. And the truth is, not a ton. Roswell and Artesia are both going to end up as top four seeds. Same thing with Bloomfield and Bernalillo. But psychologically, this was big. The last time Roswell was in Artesia was the state championship game last November. Artesia beat them up pretty good, 35-21. And Artesia was playing just great football, unstoppable football over the last month. They had scored, I think, at least 57 points in their previous four games. So to say you held them to 40, it sounds kind of ridiculous, right? But in essence, that's kind of what happened. And Roswell made a late defensive stand to hold up. So Roswell gets out with the lead, and in the district anyway, in District 2-5A. So now, assuming neither one of these two teams slip up in their last couple of games, these are going to be two of the top four seeds in 5A. But for the Coyotes, who had to do a lot of rebuilding this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that was a significant victory to go into Artesia and win like that. Given some of the flooding situation in Roswell this week, which is affecting families and players from both Roswell and Goddard, maybe sort of a nice blessing for them. So we're going to see how that plays out. The state brackets are going to be out on, I believe, Sunday morning, November 3rd, early in the morning, which means I have to get up early in the morning, and man, do I hate that. I believe they are set for 7:30 a.m. on Sunday the 3rd. Usually they come out on Saturday night. They've changed that a bit, so they'll be out on Sunday morning instead. Now, in 4A, we had a number one versus number two as well, and like I said, I was up in Bloomfield the other day. The weather was miserable. It was cold. It was windy. It was rainy. It was not a great night. I kind of wish we had a grass field. It would have been a lot more fun to watch this game on a grass field than a turf field. But Bloomfield wins this game 20-7. But I think my takeaway, and both these teams were undefeated, my takeaway is, look, Bloomfield can be gotten. Bernalillo's defense played pretty well for the most part. They gave up two early scores in the first 9 minutes, got down 13-0, and it stayed that way until near the end of the third quarter, when Bernalillo got its only score. So they cut the deficit to 13-7 as we go into the fourth quarter. And Bernalillo finally got an insurance score from their running back, Peyton Duncan, who had a big game for Bloomfield with their quarterback, Blake Spencer, being shut down really by Bernalillo's fantastic pass defense. They were all over Bloomfield's guys. They made it very tough. Now, it wasn't an easy night to pass anyway, but you usually would not see Blake Spencer, the Bloomfield quarterback, a great quarterback, get shut down this way. But Bernalillo's defense, to their credit, was just tremendous in pass defense and forced the Bobcats to more of a ground attack, which worked for them. And they got the insurance score with about 6 minutes left in the game, I think. to make it 20-7. Bernalillo was not without chances to win this game. Bernalillo had 2 drives just in the second quarter. One time they got to the Bloomfield 4-yard line. On the next drive, I think they got to the 8, and they didn't score a single point on either one of those possessions. There was a fumble, and there was an interception. So Bernalillo had its chances in the red zone to get it done, and they did not. And I know, having talked to Coach Kobos, John Kobos, the Bernalillo coach, after the game, the way he described it was a great quote. He said, "We know we left some meat on the bone," meaning they know they had their chances to push Bloomfield and even win this game. So I don't think Bernalillo would be terribly upset to get another crack at Bloomfield in the playoffs. We will have to see. But I think Bernalillo showed quite a bit. They still have offensive limitations, and that's not really a criticism. They've got a really good quarterback in Uriel Castro, and they got some kids that can play. But against the better teams on their schedule, they're not having the same kind of success as they are in other games. Of course, you could say that about a lot of teams in a lot of classes, but Bernalillo hasn't quite shown they can put up the big numbers against the better teams. And that's an issue, I think, for me. They've got to find a way to finish in the red zone better. They had the same problem against Espanola a few weeks ago, and they managed to come back and win that game in overtime when they were down 14-0 in the fourth quarter, and they were down 13-0 late in the third quarter of this game. So Bernalillo has a lot of fight, a lot of resilience, and there's a lot to love about this team. And like I said, this defense is tremendous. Bloomfield's defense, which is something we haven't talked a lot about, came into this game with 5 consecutive shutouts. Think about that for just a second. Nobody, until Bernalillo, at the end of the third quarter on Friday night, nobody had scored on Bloomfield since the end of August, and I think that was the game against Piedra Vista. So just think about that for a second. We're talking a period of about 7 actual weeks. So Bloomfield's defense, every bit as good as Bernalillo's, which would, and of course with the weather we had, that would kind of lead to a low score. But I suspect even in good weather, we wouldn't see a high-scoring game between these two anyway. So I wanted to start with those 2 games. We've had several number 1 versus number 2 matchups now in the last couple of weeks. We had Eunice and Texaco last week, a game that we talked about last week, which Texaco came back to win. And we may get one in week 11 with St. Mike's and Robertson. We'll have to see whether they're 1 and 2. Dexter might be in the plans there too. So as we move on, some other games we needed to visit about as we go back through the week. I wanted to mention Amiri Mumba from Highland, who I know I talk about a lot, and I'm a big fan of this kid. He looked to be about as close to full strength as he has been since week 1 against Manzano, and he goes off for about almost 290 yards, I think, in all 3 touchdowns, and Highland beat Belen 18-7. That was a big win for Highland. Highland believed that win got them into the playoffs. I don't think that was really an issue. I think they were going to get in anyway, but that was a big win for them. And their schedule coming up are certainly 2 winnable games. One of the other big games from last week, which mystified me a little bit in terms of the margin of the final score, was Volcano Vista and Rio Rancho. Volcano Vista went into Rio Rancho, beat the Rams 33-0. Now, Volcano's defense, very quietly, has been one of the best in Class 6A all season. This team has been really solid on that side of the ball. I've written about them before. They're aggressive. They tackle well. They're a physical group. And of course, they're playing Cleveland this week. We're going to talk more about that shortly. But to go into Rio Rancho and beat them like that, I mean, Volcano has won, I think, 7 games in a row now after losing that rain-shortened game, if you remember, on opening night against La Cueva. They have won 7 in a row. They've got things going on both sides of the ball. So that was one I wanted to talk about. Rio Rancho, meanwhile, they're going to have a bit of an issue. They play Farmington this week. That's a trick game for them because they've got Cleveland coming up the week after. Rio Rancho needs a win badly, or Rio Rancho is going to end up dropping maybe down to even 4th place in this district if they don't beat Farmington this week. So Rio Rancho looking to recover, and we'll see. They're in a bad spot after losing to Volcano the way they did. As far as Cleveland goes, I'm not sure that there is another team playing better right now than Cleveland. Maybe Centennial. In fact, I'll just say this right now, and if you can hear my voice and you don't like what I'm about to say, you're welcome to find me and let me know. If I am seeding the Class 6A playoffs today, I think I would see them Centennial 1, Cleveland 2, La Cueva 3. Centennial has been awesome all year. Cleveland is just absolutely obliterating people left and right. They beat up on Piedra Vista the other day, 54-0. I kind of laughed. They were up in Farmington while I was up in Bloomfield. They were back in Rio Rancho before I even left Bloomfield. That's how short that game was. Cleveland is really having a good go of things right now. They beat up on Cibola. They beat up on Farmington. They beat up on PV. I don't expect the same thing when they play Volcano this week, but Cleveland is going along very, very nicely. From District 26A, which is after the top, La Cueva, and then Las Lunas, which is the clear second best team in this district as far as I'm concerned. There's going to be a lot of jostling. There has been a lot of jostling, and there will be this week and next week, week 11, the last week of the season. There were a couple of key games between those teams in the middle of the standings. You got sort of a Trisco Heritage and Santa Fe at the bottom. You've got La Cueva and Las Lunas at the top. And then you got the middle four, Sandia, West Mesa, El Dorado, Albuquerque High, who all played each other last week. Sandia had a big night. Their quarterback, Jaleel Lewis, accounted for 5 touchdowns. Sandia beat up on West Mesa 41-7. And El Dorado beat Albuquerque High 21-6. Albuquerque High is slumping a bit. They had that great first month and a half. They're slumping a bit now. And so you've got, Sandia, West Mesa, El Dorado, all those teams fighting for maybe that third spot in the district. And I want to mention, even though he's on our list of stars, and we'll talk about him in a minute, Jari Morehead, a sophomore for El Dorado, who has been kind of like Devin Hester. If you're talking about electrifying kick returners, that's what this kid has been for El Dorado. I believe he had I don't know if it's 5 or 6. It's at least 5. He had 2 punt returns for touchdowns in the win over Albuquerque High, which is just, that's kind of unheard of. You don't usually see these kind of things happen, but that kid has just been killing it on special teams. And in fact, he's gotten so good that I don't know how anybody justifies kicking to him going forward. Because he's just capable of beating you. And matter of fact, it was his kick return that beat Sandia a couple of weeks ago, 14-10, now that I think about it. So he's a kid, if you play with fire, he's the kind of kid that can burn you on special teams. So we're going to see how that develops over the end of the year and whether teams actually continue to kick to him or not. I want to get into some of the 4A stuff. The big game was in Tomé, down near Las Lunas. And Valencia beat Manzano 22-19. Valencia was out 15-0 in this game. Manzano cut it to 2. And then Valencia got a late score for the final margin. Valencia playing really, really well. They're 3-1 in district. They're 6-2 overall. Their running back, Michael Storms, continues to be a really effective back, one of the best backs in 4A. And they've got a huge game this week. We're going to talk about that directly. The leader in that district is St. Pius. St. Pius went on the road, beat Chaparral 41-6. All of their young kids had another big game, including Isaiah Carpenter, their quarterback. We'll talk about that. And also in that district, a score that sort of puzzled me a bit. Silver beat Albuquerque Academy 22-9. Academy had just put up 57 points on Manzano the previous week. As I sit here, I'm not entirely sure if Academy was 100% healthy for this game. Having said that, Silver is young, but they've got a good defense. This team held St. Pius to 14 points when they came up here to play St. Pius a few weeks ago. So this is a really good defense, so I don't want to dismiss that. But it was the first district win of the year for Silver. And Silver and Academy are 2 teams that are going to be, I think, right on the bubble to make the playoffs in Class 4A, the way the district standings currently sit both in the Bloomfield, Bernalillo district, and then the other district, which has, of course, St. Pius, Valencia, Manzano, Academy, and so on, Portales as well. So that district continues to have a lot of flux to it. From the 5A ranks, a score I definitely wanted to mention, and I love the Gaston story, 100 different ways. Gaston was so bad in football for so long and couldn't get kids interested in this sport. And they struggled playing the big schools like Las Cruces and Mayfield back when they were all in the same district. And Oñate, when Oñate was called Oñate. Gaston is now a real factor in 5A football. Outside of Artesia and Roswell, 2 teams that they did not beat. This might be the best team in Class 5A. They beat Lovington the other night, 32-28. That was a crazy game. First win for Gadsden over Lovington in 70 years, 1954. Just think about that. And remember, earlier this year, Gadsden beat Mayfield for the first time in the school's history, and those 2 teams have been playing forever. So Gaston continues to be a real factor in 5A, and they are looking, if they close out their schedule with a couple of wins, this is a team that's going to have a first-round bye, which, Gaston has been in the playoffs the last couple of years. They were on the road a couple of years ago, I think, as a 10 seed, beat Los Alamos, then lost in the quarterfinals. And they were, I think, an 8 seed last year, got a home game, lost a close game to Mayfield in the first round of the playoffs. Gaston's looking very much like a team that is going to get a first-round bye. I believe they finished with Santa Teresa and then Deming, which is going to be a really tough finish. But all kudos to Coach Dino Fascio and Gaston. I love this story. And whenever I talk about teams like up here in Albuquerque, like Rio Grande and Del Norte, two teams who are really struggling to find success in football. This is very much what Gaston went through. It is possible to find your way through that looking glass. It would take time, but it can be done. Gaston was in just as bad a shape as teams like Rio Grande and Del Norte are now here in the Metro. And Gaston now is, a real force in 5A football, and it's great to watch, and we're gonna keep an eye on them going forward. The other score I wanted to mention from that district over the weekend, Mayfield beat Goddard 28-20. Mayfield very quietly has been playing a lot of good football. They had a very tough loss to Deming. They lost in the last 12 seconds. Then they won on the road and beat Lovington in overtime. And now they beat a pretty decent Goddard team. So Mayfield's kind of hanging on. They're one of those teams I don't think anybody would really want to face in the playoffs. And speaking of that, we're going to get into all that next week. Next week, we're going to talk. I'm going to give you some projections about how I think things are going to end up in terms of the seeds in 6A and 5A and 4A. We're not going to do that this week. I usually like to wait until after week 10 is over before I start to do that. So just as a quick highlight promo, next week we're going to talk seedings and kind of get a bit of a handle on how we think things are going to shake out when we get the brackets on November 3rd. Okay, moving on real quick. One last PS before we get into Week 10. I wanted to talk about our nominees for Stars of the Week from Week 9. I mentioned Amiri Mumba from Highland, 31 carries, 289, 3 touchdowns. Mason Gourlay from Volcano Vista, only 126 yards, but he rushed for 3 touchdowns, and he gives the Hawks that really grounded presence in the run game, and he's been quietly pretty productive for Volcano. Rudy Rios, a senior running back from Centennial. If you think about Zayden Davis, the fantastic quarterback for Centennial, Rudy's been one of those complementary pieces that has flourished quite well in this offense. 4 touchdowns. 3 on the ground in a win over Oregon Mountain. Peyton Duncan, junior running back from Bloomfield. We were talking about him a second ago. I had him 24 carries, 243 yards. You can do the math. That's 10 yards a carry. And the game-clinching touchdown for Bloomfield in the fourth quarter of that number 1 versus 2 game against Bernalillo. Isaiah Carpenter, the sophomore quarterback from St. Pius, is a nominee this week. 4 touchdown passes on the road Friday night at Chaparral. Man, do I love this kid. And I'm telling you, when he's a senior, he's going to have a lot of eyeballs on him from people at the next level. He is 6'5", with a rifle arm, and he's got a couple of years to work on mechanics and other intangibles. He's going to be a kid a lot of people are going to be looking at. And then Jari Morehead is the last nominee this week, the sophomore kick returner from El Dorado. He's the first kick returner I think we've actually included on our Stars of the Week in the couple of years that we've been doing this. As I said, 2 punt returns in the win over Albuquerque High. So as I'm breezing through momentarily here, leading the way, Isaiah Carpenter, 43.1% of the vote so far. Voting continues through the end of the afternoon on Saturday, and then we'll reveal our choice on Sunday. Peyton Duncan from Bloomfield, 38.5% of the vote. So those two are pretty close in terms of the voting this week. So once more, you can vote if you're interested up until late Saturday afternoon, and then we'll name the recipient on Sunday. One wanted to also mention, as you see this, it's going to be at least Thursday, the 24th. You can view my prep football picks in the Albuquerque Journal in our Thursday morning print edition. Myself, Adam Deal, the voice of New Mexico United, and also the voice of Cleveland Storm, home football games. I'll see Adam this week out at Cleveland. He's been picking. Adam's been struggling. It's been tough for him. But he doesn't spend as much time doing this as I do. So I had a big week over him this last week. So you can view our picks, which I have not done yet for Week 10. When I finish with this podcast, I'll get on those. But you can view our picks in the Journal on Thursday morning, and I will attach them to my social media account, my X account, before kickoff on Thursday night. So moving right along, let's talk about Week 10 games that are on my radar. So the first game, the best game, the most important game of the week is Volcano Vista and Cleveland. You're talking about two teams ranked in the top 4 in 6A. Volcano, which hasn't lost since week 1. Cleveland, which hasn't lost since week 1 to Centennial. So they both come in 7-1. They're both 3-0 in district. This is essentially the district championship game in this district. The only way it wouldn't be would be if Rio Rancho somehow were to beat Cleveland in week 11, and it would be hard to imagine that happening after what Volcano did to them. But we've got that Volcano defense going up against a really good Cleveland run game and a quarterback, Jordan Hatch, their junior quarterback, who is advanced so far over the last season and a half, I would say. He's really spinning the ball very well, reads the game incredibly well, and he's got weapons in this offense. Like Jacob Maldonado, for example. He's got guys he can throw to, and he's got guys that can stretch the field, and he's got a good running game. He's got a couple of good running backs. So this is going to be a great matchup as far as I'm concerned. We'll see how far along that Volcano defense is on Friday night. I'll be out there as well. That's 7 o'clock on Friday. The other big game, at least in the metro area, we're going to talk about a couple of games outside the metro. The other big game in the metro area is also Friday night. Valencia and St. Pius are playing out at Community Stadium on Friday night. These are the top two teams in District 2-4A. So St. Pius wins, that the district is pretty much over. St. Pius will have a 2-game lead in the loss column with only 1 week left, and St. Pius closes against Manzano on a Thursday night, and Valencia is up here to play Albuquerque Academy on the final Saturday of the season. But if St. Pius wins this game, district is over. That should lock up a top 4 seed in the playoffs for St. Pius, and it will certainly clinch the district championship for St. Pius. If Valencia wins, then you've got 2 teams with 1 loss going to the final week of the season, and then you have any number of scenarios which could still play out. And Valencia is certainly capable of doing that. Valencia's got a terrific defense, strong ground game. And we'll see how that group fares against St. Pius. I hate that I can't see that game. I wish I could be in both places, but that should be a fantastic game. From the ubiquitous District 2-5A, the Roswell Artesia District, the key games to watch this week, Deming and Lovington, who are both ranked in the top 4 this week by the coaches. This becomes a more important game for Lovington, which has dropped games recently to Roswell and Artesia, and now also Gadsden. So Lovington does not want to play itself out of a first-round home game in the playoffs, so they need to find a way to get back on the winning track. Deming, of course, I think Deming's one of those teams. They're going to end up with a home game. I don't know if it'll be in the quarterfinals or in the first round. I'm on the bubble about that. We'll have to see how this week's games go first. Artesia's playing Goddard this week, which is always a great rivalry as well. And we mentioned the Rio Rancho game in Farmington, which is like a sneaky, underrated game. Rio Rancho very much needs a win after that loss to Volcano. Farmington could really use a win of substance as well. So that game, I think, will ultimately decide 3rd and 4th place in District 1-6A. Anyway, last thing before we get out of here for the week, we're going to talk just a little bit of cross country. The PreState Extravaganza meet at Albuquerque Academy was held last week. This is the biggest regular season meet of the year. In fact, it's almost a duplicate of what we'll see at the state meet. Virtually every single team in the state of note, other than, I think, Zuni's boys and Gateway Christian's girls. I think 22 of the 24 programs that won a trophy at state last year were in this meet. All the big schools were here. All the best runners were here. So it was really a good glimpse into what what we might see at state, which is coming up in 3 weeks at Academy. This is why so many teams show up for this meet, because it's held on the same course. It's the exact same course as the state course will be on November 9th. So 5A, Gianna Raymer from El Dorado, she won by 71 seconds, which is just absurd. She's just really such a joy to watch. Corbin Coombs from Oregon Mountain and Jaron Wisner, his teammate at Oregon Mountain, went 1-2 in 5A boys. Charlie Voss, the defending state champion from Rio Rancho, he finished a distant third. Charlie did not look right to me on Saturday. He finished, I think, about 38 seconds behind Corbin Coombs. There's not a 38-second gap between those two ordinarily. Usually those two are very closely matched. So not Charlie's best race, but of course they'll be back together at state. Team winners, El Dorado's girls, and boy, just wait until Gianna's younger sister, Isla, joins this program in a couple of years. They're going to be sick to watch. And the Rio Rancho boys won the 5A meet. In 4A, it was a total sweep for Albuquerque Academy. Boys and girls beat Los Alamos in both team standings, and also for Academy, Anna Hastings, Nick Ponte, the individual champions, both from the Chargers. In Class 3A, Kate Henderson from Sandia Prep and Elijah England from Navajo Prep won titles. St. Michael's boys, Santa Fe Prep's girls were the team champions. And then the Marquez siblings from Oak Grove Classical Academy here in Albuquerque, Joshua and Olivia, both won individual titles at the Extravaganza. McCurdy's girls, Oak Grove's boys were the team champions. That's always a fun event, and probably the one event in any sport that brings together almost all the great athletes from the same sport on the same day at the same location. No other sport has an event that can match this. Matter of fact, I don't even think there's one that's even close that can match this. So that's why I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge this. You do not see all the best athletes in any of the other individual sports come together like this in the same location for the same event. So, yeah, state will be coming up. State soccer will be brackets coming out this weekend, I believe on Sunday. I will run that down when the time comes. State soccer begins like middle of next week. Like I said, cross country, this is the last week of the regular season. Then they all have district meets next week, and then state football, 2 more weeks of regular season for the 11-man programs. And volleyball still has a couple of weeks left in its regular season before they get around to deciding their brackets. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here for the week, get out and enjoy some football this weekend. Once again, we thank Western New Mexico University for being the sponsor of this program. I greatly appreciate it. And, yeah, we're going to have a ton to talk about. Once again, seedings. We're going to talk a lot of football seedings next week prior to Week 11. In the meantime, continue to find our podcast. You can find them at abqjournal.com. Sean Ryder, our Lobo football writer, continues to do his great Lobo football podcasts. And you can find these podcasts on multiple platforms, YouTube, of course, abqjournal.com, SoundCloud, I believe, Spotify, I think also as well. So you can find these podcasts on multiple platforms. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us. You can find this episode and all our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. If you enjoy our podcasts, please like and subscribe, and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us continue to bring you more content like this. See the show notes for a discount on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading local news source.